This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, everybody. My name is Diane Malik, and I'm the Business Services Advisor at the Arlington Heights Memorial Library. And I want to thank you for joining us this evening for this program. Before I turn it over to our presenter, I've got a little bit of library business that I just want to mention. First of all, we're recording this for on-demand viewing, so hopefully that can be helpful to some people. If you have questions throughout, please go ahead and just put them in the chat. As Chelsie said, that she'll be able to monitor that and answer whatever questions you have. And I also want to mention that I have a free networking event that I host for the community every other month here at the library. And it's open to everybody and you don't have to register or anything, but it's called Small Business Coffee and Connect. And I have donuts and tea and coffee, and small business owners and entrepreneurs just come together, meet, get a little exposure, talk about your business, that kind of thing, make some connections. And I just want to mention that the next one is on Thursday, August 25th. It's at 9 a.m. here at the library. So if you have any questions or want to know more about it, I'm going to put my email in the chat and you could certainly reach out to me. Okay, with that said, I am going to go ahead and introduce you to Chelsie Tamms. She's our speaker today, and she's the founder and artist for Lettering Works. She's an award-winning lettering artist and designer based out of Chicago with over 10 years of practice in lettering and design. And she's very passionate about her craft. And I'm so thrilled that she does these types of programs so she can share some of her insights being in this kind of business over the last 10 years with everybody else. So Chelsie, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Diane, for inviting me to speak tonight. I'm very excited to be here and share a little bit of insight in regards to charging your worth with confidence. So it took me a while, of course, to get to this point where I feel not only comfortable in charging my worth, but also comfortable in sharing insights and ideas with you all so you can do the same. So we're going to talk about some common pricing mistakes today and some examples so you can really shift your mindset to being able to charge more and feeling good about it. Not only just feeling good about putting that price out there, but like really internally feeling like that price is your worth and you're comfortable putting it out there, getting that money and pursuing whatever it is your passion. So as I said earlier, for those who were joining, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. If you have questions throughout this entire presentation, I will be monitoring the chat so we can stop at any time. I'm here for you to answer your questions and be with you for this next hour to hopefully get some nice takeaways around this topic. So feel free to interrupt me by throwing those messages in the chat. I'll have a couple questions too. Hopefully we can make this a little bit interactive. Like I said, if anyone would like to be off video or showing their video, rather, that would be great for me to get some feedback, make sure what I'm saying is resonating with you, but I'm excited to be here. So we're just going to go ahead and dive in. So as I alluded to, today's objective is really to shift your mindset around pricing and leave with some specific tactics to implement so you can have improved pricing and improved confidence overall. I always like to start with, we need to focus this time for yourself, learning and taking this in. So turn off all of the distractions in front of you, whether it's your phone. You don't have to turn it off completely if you're waiting for an important call or anything like that, but try to just flip your phone over, shut the door, whatever you need to do to be really present here. You're going to get the most out of this presentation if you really listen to all the examples and things that I'm sharing. So the first thing I like to do to kind of warm us up is to talk about if we're leaving money on the table. So there's two very basic ways how you can increase your revenue if you have your own business or if you're offering any type of product or service. So one is to sell more volume and two is to increase the price. Pretty simple, right? But getting your pricing right is essential to making the money that you deserve. And it's such an abstract concept too. There's all different ways of pricing things. Things are priced all differently across the entire world. So it's really a matter of figuring out what's right for you and how to actually execute on that. So I'm going to run through a couple examples here. So as Diane mentioned, I'm an artist. So a lot of the examples I'll give relate to artists because I just really enjoy working with artists, talking about art, all of these good things. But if any of these examples feel like they could relate to the product or service that you're selling as well, imagine yourself in some of these situations. So first is Jenny selling some art prints. So she regularly sells them for $10 and she wants to make more money. So those two different options that we have for selling more prints or increasing the price. So we can see here that if she sells 100 of these prints for $10 each, she'd make $1,000. But if she considered raising the price to $15, she would only need to sell 67 of them to make that same amount of money. So this is where we're able to take kind of that judgment call on how realistic is it for me to sell 1,000 of these or 100 of these or 100 versus 67. So we can kind of crank out some of these numbers and figure out what feels realistic, what feels right for my business or my service. Do I think I can really sell 100 of these at this price? Maybe that's really easy. So if that's really easy, do I think I can sell 67 of them at this higher price? So these are things we want to think about. Do we want to move these two levers, selling more prints or selling more of your good or service, or increasing the price? And as you can see here too, if she sold 100 at that higher price, she would have an extra $500, which is pretty exciting. Another quick example, photography. So let's imagine Kyle selling some photography shoots for $500 and he also wants to make more money this year. So he has those same two options, selling more sessions or increasing the price of those sessions. So you can see once again that if he sold 50 sessions at $500, he would make $25,000. But if instead he rose the price to $650, he would only need to sell 39 sessions or slots throughout the year. So looking at this, he could think a little bit more realistically about 50 is kind of a lot. Maybe that's one every single week for almost the entire year. Maybe these sessions involve a lot of work. Maybe it would make more sense to make them a little bit higher price point and then not have to work every single week of the year. And he could aim for 39 sessions. And then of course, it's great to always see too, if you do raise your prices and then you actually sell more than you think you're going to, you could sell those 50 at the higher price and get an extra $7,500. One last example here is Sarah selling music lessons. So let's imagine that she's selling them for $50 an hour, and these are private music lessons, but she wants to make more money. So she can look at selling more lessons or increasing the price. And this one's a little bit of a catch in terms of it's not that same standard way as we just looked at with the two other examples. Maybe she wants to really drastically increase her price, maybe to $125. So she'd need to sell a lot less sessions, but I think one idea to keep in mind here is, okay, $50 to $125. Maybe an individual student wouldn't pay that, but what if she had a group of 3 or 4 or even 10 students in that class so that she was actually making that $125 per hour or per lesson, but she didn't actually have to teach more and more students. So that's something to think about as well. So just like the other examples, if she raises her price here, she has to sell a lot fewer sessions. So this might be an opportunity to reconsider how you're selling what you're selling. And maybe you don't have to do just one-on-one work. Maybe you could do something in a group where the students are actually paying less per session, but you're making more for your time or for your hours there. So I want to give a couple examples of what makes you a good candidate for listening to the rest of this presentation, because your time is valuable. So if this doesn't apply to you, I don't want you sitting here listening through and getting nothing out of it. But I do want to stress that you can be at all different stages in business. So you're in the right place if you're really just getting started and you want to build a solid foundation for your business. And I saw a message in the chat of somebody who's very new, just resigned from teaching and looking into a side hustle. So that's a wonderful opportunity, right? This is you. You're just getting started. You want to build a solid foundation for your business. Next, if you have some experience already running a business, but you're ready to take things to the next level, maybe you're not taking yourself seriously enough, or you're just ready to get a little bit more serious and excited about charging more in your business. You've started to get those skills, and now it's time to take it to the next level. You're also in the right place if you're a seasoned pro. I can say from experience that I could sit through a presentation like this, even being somebody who gives these types of presentations, and still get something out of it. So there's always an opportunity to revisit the basics and know that there's room for improvement, regardless of where you're at in business. Hopefully some of these tips will help you reframe things, strengthen your mindset, and get excited about charging what you need to be charging. So which one are you? I'd love to hear from you in the chat. Just type a 1, 2, or 3. So 1, if you're just getting started in business. 2, if you already have some experience. Or 3, if you are pro, ready to revisit the basics. So we've already got Maria's a 1. We've got a 2, from Kimberly, another 2, another 1. So we've got some 1s and 2s going already. So a lot of people kind of fall into these 2 categories of just getting started or having some experience. So I hope this is very helpful for you. I'm excited that you're here and really starting that foundation, because let me tell you, the faster you can get this incorporated into your business, it has a compounding effect for the rest of the duration of your business. So whatever reason you're here, I fully support you. I'm excited to answer your questions and to help you learn this information so you can go out there and make more money, feel better about what you're offering, and just feel very confident in all of the skills and things that you have to offer the world. Quick introduction to myself. I've had my business for over 6 years now and specialize in lettering, graphic design, branding, all things art and creative. And I've really shifted into offering other services to support other artists and creative business owners to figure out how to actually build this business. I did it from scratch, started right after graduating from college, and now I live in Chicago with my partner in the Logan Square area, and absolutely love teaching on these topics, as well as drawing just about everything and anything and working on branding projects. So a couple key facts of my qualifications, why you should pay attention to this. I've generated over $100,000 in annual revenue for the past 3 years. And I think that's really key to share, not because I think that's a cool brag or anything like that, but the reality is running a business is really expensive. So just because it's $100,000 doesn't mean that's what I take home, but it also means that you really have to be kind of aggressive or bold in charging what you need to charge to actually get to the numbers that you want to get to. The other thing that's been really exciting for me is being able to work with incredible dream clients like the Field Museum. They're one of my favorites simply because how cool is it to sell products in a museum? I think it's pretty cool. They're a world-class museum and they've been an absolute dream to work with. And I have different stickers and enamel pins and postcards sold in their gift shop, as well as their gift shop in the airport. So very cool and exciting things. But this all doesn't just happen from going in there and saying, I don't know what I should charge. It happens from thinking things through and making sure you feel valued and seeking out opportunities that really align with that. And then it all kind of falls into place. So as I mentioned, I have over 5 years of business experience, just coming up on 6 years in business. And I've learned a lot. I've done a lot of the wrong things and I've done a lot of the right things. So if you're riding that entrepreneurial roller coaster, I 100% feel you. It's not always easy, but here's to just building this dream career, this dream job that's perfectly fit for you. And ultimately, what I want to share is that I feel in control of what I'm taking on in terms of projects and opportunities. I'm able to say no to things that drain me or undervalue me or make me feel really uncomfortable. And I'm able to say yes to projects that really excite me and feel good to participate in. And sometimes, and I am not going to touch on this too much in this presentation because it's very related to actually making money, but there's things outside of money as well. There is our mental health. There is just our social well-being in general. And these are things that happen when you align with the right projects and the right people and the right opportunities. So it's not all money, but there's a lot of values that we have that can be incorporated into these opportunities. So ultimately, say no to the projects that drain you and say yes to the ones that excite you. So I want you to close your eyes or just pause for a second and imagine what it would feel like if you only said yes to projects and opportunities that truly light you up and get you excited and make you feel valued. What does that feel like? Can you imagine a scenario where you're just able to work on things that really make you feel good? That's the goal. That's what I want you to keep in mind as we talk through these. And I also want to say that it's very much possible to build your business in a way that people are actually coming to you for your unique skills, your talents, and your offerings, and not simply for your title or some type of value pricing. People love to be conscious of money and spending. I think we all are to a certain degree, but at the same time, we will pay for things of value. So it's all about communicating your value and knowing that you have value as well, so that you can communicate that to people and they feel good about paying you for it. So quick content overview of what we're going to talk about today. Money mindset blocks, some common pricing mistakes, one small shift you can make today that will improve your confidence and ability to charge more, a couple additional resources, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. Like I mentioned, you can drop questions in anytime throughout this presentation and we'll address them as well. So don't feel like you need to wait to the end for that. So money mindset blocks. These are our ingrained beliefs about money. I can tell you, I definitely have overcome some negative ones of, if you've ever heard the more money, more problems idea, or just kind of feeling or this thought that you have to work really, really hard for money. It needs to be really difficult for you to actually make money. And that doesn't have to be true. So I want you to think about your own money mindset blocks. What beliefs do you have about money that might be negative, that could be holding you back from comfortably charging more in your business or in any area of your life? So if you want, you can jot this down on a piece of paper or just think about it. But these are things that you really have to address before you can get to the stage of actually charging your worth. If you're going to block yourself with just these mindset blocks on, I think that money should take a lot of effort to earn, or I'm not worthy of making a lot of money, those things are going to hold you back in so many different ways. So an essential mindset shift that really needs to happen in order for you to go through with any of this is truly just believing that you can actually make a sustainable living. How many people do you know, or maybe you've been this person at some point where you've thought, I don't think it's possible. If you don't think it's possible, you're going to self-sabotage and do things and make small micro decisions that don't line you up for success. So I want you to keep that in mind, because first is believing and knowing it's possible. And that's part of the reason I share some of my experiences as well. I'm somebody who's actually doing what I set out to do, and you can as well. If I can do it, you can do it. So make sure you're keeping that mindset shift. If you don't already believe that you can fully make a sustainable living with your business, now is the time to start truly believing that. Okay, now we're going to get into the common pricing mistakes that I see. So these are ones that I see with artists, but also just business owners in general, and we'll cover how to fix them. Number one, you base pricing based on what you personally pay. So let's talk about that. Number one, you are not your target market. So if you are coming up with all of your pricing just based on, well, I would pay $10 for a hamburger, or I would pay $5, that doesn't really equate to your target market. You are not going to be your target market. There is a possibility that you could be similar to your target market, or maybe your target market, but at the same time, it's not based on you. It's based on this external market that you're defining. So you want to identify and research your target market to figure out what is right for them. And then you also want to really understand the rates in the markets that you're selling in. So somewhere like Chicago versus somewhere maybe more in central Illinois might be very different markets. So we have a question here, which is, can you give an example of a target market? Absolutely. So for me, one of the target markets that I work with is artists. So artists that are getting started in business, or artists that are established in business and usually generating at least $50,000 revenue. So basically what you want to do when you're defining a target market is get as specific as possible. It doesn't mean that you can't work with people outside of your target market, but you ideally want to create a sort of persona around this ideal target person that you want to work with. So an example, like I said, is an artist, maybe an artist who makes about $50,000 a year, but needs some help leveling up in business. That could be one example. Another example might be mothers. Maybe your target market is mothers because you offer a product that helps make their lives easier. So all of these different target markets, you could have multiple target markets for a certain product, but the more specific you get, the easier of a time you'll have talking to those people and connecting and resonating with them. Because I'll tell you now that if you want everyone to be your target market, your messaging is not going to resonate with the right people. You need to get specific. So number two, this mistake I see pretty often, especially with artists, but with all different types of business owners. And that is forgetting to account for all costs. And that is way more than your time. So let's get into it. And actually, somebody did mention that they were looking to start a side hustle. So I do want to mention this comment. If your business is currently your side hustle and you have another source of full-time income, it doesn't mean that you should charge any less. So this is kind of a big thing that I want to stop and even reiterate one more time. If you have a side hustle and you have a source of income, it doesn't mean your pricing should be any different. So if there's another graphic designer here who, like me, is offering, say, a logo design service, and you have a full-time job, we should charge pretty similar rates. You shouldn't charge half of my rate just because you have a different source of income. And why is that? Number one, low rates become really problematic if you're relying on what you're already having, because you're not going to be able to grow. So you're not considering future costs. I was totally guilty of this, and I'll get into that in a second. But you want to make sure that you can actually support yourself long-term, sustainable. This idea of it's not just a one-off thing. You can't just get paid $25 and then if your computer breaks tomorrow, how are you going to fix it? And then the other big reason that these lower rates and undercutting can be problematic is if somebody like myself is selling this service and I'm fully relying on this income, and you are undercutting it because you have a source of income, that's going to make it a lot harder for both of us to grow and succeed. So it makes the demand a little bit wonky in terms of where people are going and the quality of service and all of these things happening. It's not to say you have to charge the exact same amount as me if you're offering the same thing, but it's to say that you need to keep in consideration that you want to grow this. Or if you don't, maybe that's a different way of structuring things. But I feel like our goal here is to really charge your worth in a way that gives you this sustainable opportunity, which is really, really exciting. So make sure you're not undercutting other professionals, and make sure you're not undercutting yourself. So my quick little story of how I did this exact thing. So when I graduated from Bradley University, I actually won $10,000 in startup funding. And I had to do a lot of financial planning and figure out all of these different things of how I would use the $10,000, how I would charge for my services. And so I had very, very low startup costs. I already had a computer from school. I already had the design programs, just needed my talent and skill, right? Well, I thought it would be okay to charge $25 an hour for my services. And I was quickly corrected from a fellow designer who had probably about 15, 20 years more experience than myself, and said, I charge $65 an hour. That's your new rate. We're the same. We're offering the same service here. You got a degree in this, you're qualified. And also, if you start charging $25, I'm not going to be able to charge $65. And that was a huge light bulb moment for me, because I at first thought, well, I'm not qualified enough to be charging that much. But at the same time, I absolutely learned that if I did have that lower price, then it would price her out of a lot of opportunities. And I think that's where the community over competition really works in our favor, especially with charging with confidence. This is something we should tell our friends about. We should have more open conversations about financials and what we're charging. And I think the one key there too is don't expect people further along in business than you to tell you what they're charging. You should go to them with your ideas, what you're charging, and check in with them and say, hey, is $25 an hour too low, or does that seem about right? Because as somebody who has experience now, I get a lot of questions from artists and freelance designers who say, how should I price this? And there's a lot of factors that go into that. We'll talk about that today. But at the same time, if they come to me and say, hey, is $50 too small, or is 25, I can answer and just say, yeah, that's way too low. Try doubling it, or something to that effect. And the reason I share these photos as well is because back when I was a student, when I was graduating as a senior, I thought $10,000 was so much money. And honestly, I still think it's a lot of money. But at the same time, fast forward just years later, and I got a check from the Field Museum for over $10,000 for half of an order. So I say that and share this specific picture in this specific scenario to say that money is such a construct, and money is something that is so subjective to so many different people. So $10,000 to one person is so much, where to somebody else, it's not much at all. And I think you'll even experience that in your business. What you think right now is so much money may seem like so little money in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. So those are things to consider as you're pricing out what you're offering now and what you're really striving to do in the future. So getting back to accounting for all costs. So you have to think about everything imaginable. So we're talking about your overhead expenses. For me, what that looks like is a computer, an iPad, other equipment, printers, office space if I need it, software that I need to design things, whatever specific tools that you need to buy, regardless of if you have any projects. And then there's also unforeseen expenses, equipment repairs. There's been times that my Apple Pencil has died, and in order to finish the project I'm in the middle of, I need to go to the store and buy one that same day. So I need to build that cost into what I'm charging so that these unforeseen things that happen, they can actually be supported by our sustainable incomes. And then of course, you want to have new equipment, you want to have an education and growth opportunities, maybe going to a conference or learning something, investing in yourself. So the more you undercut yourself, you'll see the more your pricing yourself out of all of these different opportunities that are in front of you. You want to build that into your price so that you're able to easily say yes to a conference, easily book a trip or a ticket to anything that will help you further yourself in your career. Okay, so mistake number 3 is oversimplifying what you offer. And I have to bring up another example that I've personally had this experience far too many times. And I get the question, can you just write this in your handwriting? So I don't know if anyone here can relate, and I'd love to hear about it in the comments if you can relate, unfortunately. But has your profession or work ever been simplified? Have you been told something like, this is so fun for you, so maybe we shouldn't pay you that much, or can you volunteer to do this? Oh, you enjoy it so much. I think this is especially true with the arts, but also just in general. People are quick to say, well, you love this, so why don't you charge me less? Or this is so easy, it just looks like writing something. Let me tell you, lettering's a lot different than handwriting. There's a lot more that goes into it, but I think that this happens all the time. So we need to stand up and educate people on how are we doing this? Why is this valuable? Why is this important? And really kind of close that gap between this is as simple as just writing something, or maybe it's something a lot more. And I also want to say sometimes we oversimplify what we offer as well. So I've done that before of just thinking, oh yeah, it's not that big of a deal. But this oversimplification can really just throw us off in terms of like charging our worth and thinking less of what we have to offer. So what you do is not just anything. It's your profession, it's your expertise. It takes training, skill, time, and energy to offer this. So it's really, really important that you're considering this every single time you put a price out there. And then you also want to consider just all that goes into a piece of work, whether it's a service or whether it's a product. There's so many different deliverables and different pieces that we have to work with here. And it's really important that you acknowledge all of them. My favorite thing to do is just grab a piece of paper and write down, brainstorm every possible thing, from like the time it takes you to go physically ship something to the materials it takes to tape or a label or a package to put it in, if you're putting anything else in there, if you're sending a printed card with a thank you note, just all of these different things, they really add up. And if we're not being truly honest about how much all of that costs and what that looks like, then we get into this trouble of realizing, oh, I'm actually not making that much money because I forgot that business cards cost 25 cents or maybe even 50 cents if you get a really nice printed one. And if you're selling a $4 sticker, for example, that really cuts into the cost. So these are things that we have to think about so we can get our pricing right. And we have a question here, which is, can you discuss your thoughts about charging on a sliding scale? Absolutely. I love the idea of a sliding scale, first off, because I think it's really important that in this idea of charging our worth, we're also still being accessible to the groups of people that we need and want to be accessible to. I think a couple key things around sliding scale. One, you need to figure out what your minimum amount of money you need to make for this to make sense is before you can even offer something like a sliding scale. And that's because if we just arbitrarily offer a sliding scale of pay whatever you want, that can be problematic because we might not realize that somebody is offering to pay us half of what it costs to produce the actual product or produce the actual service. So there can be ways to offer that still, but I think it's really essential to know your numbers and know what you need to make in order to break even, know what you need to make to be profitable, and know what you need to make to be like very comfortably profitable or excited about what you have to offer. So I would say the number one thing to consider with this sliding scale is making sure you just know your numbers. Then you know what you can actually offer. And then the other opportunity too, this is something that I personally love to do in my business, is figuring out just those numbers back to that initial conversation we had at the beginning of this presentation, which is charging more or charging or selling more. So those two options, you can either sell more or you can charge more. So with the sliding scale, you could consider charging more and then offering some products for less. That's where the sliding scale could go. So instead of capping the top of your sliding scale at this is the full price, actually consider making some of that sliding scale go above and beyond what the regular price is. So that's something to consider too. We could get into sliding scales and different discounts and offers. There's so many opportunities out there, but I think the underlying thing and the whole point of this is to figure out like, what do you need to charge? And once you have that, you can be flexible and decide, oh, I could take less because I'm still covering my basic costs and maybe I'm donating some time in this situation. Or you have to decide, you know what, I really need my time to be covered at this certain rate and I can't go lower. And then that's where you start the sliding scale, the bottom of it. And you can always donate things as well for specific instances. So I always like to keep that in my back pocket as well. So I want to hear if anyone here has done any of these 3 common mistakes. I can tell you I've done them all. So number 1, and put in the comments just a 1, 2, or 3, or all of them. If you've 1, price based on what you personally pay. 2, if you've forgotten to account for all costs, and we're talking all different costs beyond your time, all of these things, maybe even a thing or 2 you heard today that you didn't think to ever consider. Or 3, if you've oversimplified your offer. So we have somebody is a 3, a 1, somebody's done all of them, 2 and 3. So yeah, we're all in good company here. We've at least made one of these mistakes. If you haven't, maybe you should be the one presenting on your secrets to avoid making these very, very common mistakes in pricing. But it's so easy to do, even if you're very established and very professional. It might come down to the context. It might come down to you doing things too quickly. But I think the overall lesson here is to really think about, okay, how do I account for everything? How do I really take a clear evaluation of what's going on so I can make sure I feel really good about what I'm putting out there, what I'm getting in return, and how I can just really connect with that so you have that confidence and this is what I need to charge. And it can always evolve and change. So I love the phrase know your worth and then add tax, but there's 2 things that you need to do here. 1 is determine what you need to charge to be sustainable. So this kind of piggybacks on that baseline of the sliding scale idea. You need to figure out what you realistically need or want to make. And then number 2, you have to offer something that aligns in that value provided. And the best example I can think of with this is a really bad example of how we could create a pricing scheme. I'd like to go to California, so I'm going to charge $500. The end. That's not very helpful. But if I am realistic and have that same personal goal, I would like to go to California, so I would like to charge $500 for this next project. Step 2 is actually coming in and saying, okay, what can I offer that is worth $500 to someone? How can I align that value with what I personally need to be sustainable? So don't forget to do that second step. Don't forget to figure out, okay, I want to make $100,000, but how do I actually offer $100,000 of value to people? It's not just a matter of I'm making this much money because I want to. Sometimes it can be as simple as that, but more often than not, it's really centered in, okay, how do we actually get something of value? So I could sell you a $4 sticker, I could sell you a $3 sticker, or maybe I could sell you a $10 sticker. What would the $10 sticker have to have that actually makes it worth $10? Maybe it's a little bit bigger, maybe it's shiny, maybe it has some glitter on it somehow. What are these things that can get this goal, me making say $10 on a sticker? What value do I need to provide in order for somebody to comfortably pay that? So that's what I'd like you all to consider next time you pick your goal of what you'd like to make. Think about how you can get something that aligns with that value. So as I mentioned with the sliding scale, what you need needs to be your minimum offer. So I don't want to see you offer anything below what you need to make. If you have rent to pay, or if you have other bills to pay and things to pay off, make that your minimum offer. Make sure that you're working backwards and you're dividing it up in a way that you can actually get what you need. I think that's the most key thing to being sustainable, is recognizing what do I need to make as a minimum? And once again, how do I offer something of value that lines up with that? So I'd encourage you to think about that and think about what minimum offers you need to make in order to make your goals, whatever those financial goals are. I also absolutely love the book Profit First. If you haven't read it before, highly recommend adding it to your reading list, because I think it teaches a lot about just how to structure your business a little bit better and how to be really smart about cutting things off that aren't needed. So I'm going to read you this quote. All revenue is not the same. If you remove your worst unprofitable clients and the now unnecessary costs associated with them, you will see a jump in profitability and a reduction in stress, often within a few weeks. Equally important, you will have more time to pursue and clone your best clients. So translation of that, fire your worst clients, you'll have more time and opportunity to rehire and clone your best clients. And the reality is, some of your worst clients are probably losing you money. Some of these worst deals, these low cost things are actually costing you money, because when you go back to that mistake number 2 and write out absolutely all costs, the time it takes for you to email them back and forth, the time it takes for you to deliver things, work on things, edits, whatever it is for your industry and your offering, when you're really honest and realistic about that, your worst clients are definitely costing you money. So this is your permission slip to go out and fire them. Of course, be nice about it. But one way of firing them too is saying, you know what, I crunched the numbers and I realized that I'm losing money on this, or I'm unable to provide this service or this offering at this rate. The new rate that I calculated is X. If you aren't interested in paying that, that is okay. Let me know if you'd like a recommendation for where else you could go if you're able to provide something like that, or you can just end it there and say, I have to charge this amount. If you cannot do that, I totally understand, and you are welcome to find these services elsewhere. So hopefully at least one person here today is already scheming about who they're going to fire first, because it's holding you back. Let me tell you, do less and you will actually find yourself sometimes making more money. And this is proof of that. So read Profit First if you haven't already. It's a great book. I also want to share the reminder that every time you say yes, you say no to something else. So a lot of times, maybe you've heard the quote or this phrase this way or the other way, but it goes both ways. If you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. Maybe I say no to presenting and I say yes to some self-care time and relaxation. If I say yes to something, then I'm saying no to something else. So think about this with your profitable clients and your unprofitable clients. When you say yes to them, you're saying no to let me restate that. When you're saying yes to unprofitable clients, you're saying no to the opportunity of higher paid clients. So think about that. Think about how you can align and how you can create more opportunity for better opportunities. Don't find yourself kind of floundering with a lot of really low paid opportunities where you don't feel valued, because let me be honest, it's taking up all the time for you to move on to better things. So one small shift you can make today, and I feel like we've been building up to this. So it's this idea of training your mind to see all of the possibilities out there. It's recognizing that there's opportunity and money to be had. And a lot of these struggles that we talk about related to pricing come from this scarcity mindset. This mindset and this idea that we're afraid that another project won't come along or another opportunity won't be there if I don't take this one opportunity in front of me. So what I encourage you to do is shift to an abundance mindset. And this really helps us recognize that there's more than enough for everyone. We can all be successful here. There's not just going to be one successful person. There's so many successful people. So really thinking about the possibilities, not falling into this scarcity mindset where we're afraid that if we say no to this one project, no other projects will come forth for us. A lot of times it's just recognizing there's an abundance of projects out there. So if this isn't the right fit, let's say no to it and move on to the next one. There will always be a next one. So having that confidence and having just that belief and that mindset that there's abundance waiting for you is going to make a huge difference in getting you out of some of those tricky situations where you're working with people that really just don't value you, aren't paying you right, aren't making you feel good. So think about the abundance, think about all that's out there, and be okay with letting go of some of the things that are really not serving you well. I'd like to also pose this question. So if you had all of the time and the money in the world and you knew you couldn't fail, what would you be doing? So think about that. What would you be doing if you couldn't fail? This is a little bit of that abundance mindset. That opportunity is out there waiting for you. So what if you took it? What if you opened up yourself, your mind, your time to actually allow that opportunity to come forth so you could take advantage of it and meet that next goal? And this is the fun part where I get to say, that's exactly what I'm doing. And that's why I love what I'm doing, because I'm really focused on that idea. Going back to this idea of if I had all the time and the money in the world and I knew I couldn't fail, what would I be doing? I would be doing exactly what I'm doing now. And I think that figuring that out and lining up and constantly recalibrating and improving, because I'm not saying that I have it all figured out. I'm not saying that my business is perfect. But what I am saying is that I'm very attuned to improving and being open to new possibilities. And I feel like that's exactly how I got different products like these shown into the Field Museum, because I was open to those opportunities, because I believed they were out there. And because I took those chances and I waited for the right thing to come along, I didn't just take the first thing that made me feel a little weird or insecure or undervalued. I waited for the big opportunities and I rose up to those because I worked on building this confidence muscle around charging what I need to charge. I spent lots of time cranking numbers to figure out what makes sense. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to do with products because there's actual printing costs, production costs, all of these different costs. It's not just your time, but also how do we factor our time in and make sure that we're not just covering the product costs, but we're also being compensated in a way that feels exciting and valuable to us as well. I also want to share a little anecdote and note on this idea of being called tough, because I don't consider myself a super tough person, but this is something that's come up before. And I think it will come up if you start to get more serious about knowing your numbers and charging your worth. People are going to say, wow, you're really tough to work with, or you're really expensive. And they have this kind of insinuation that like, you're too tough and I want you to be less tough, and kind of they want to push you over and like make you charge less, because of course we all like to get a good deal or we don't want to pay as much. But I think the really important thing to take away from that is it's okay to stick with your pricing and set boundaries of, I will not work on a project lower than X amount, because every time I have in the past, it hasn't worked out for me. And that price, that bracket has increased for me over time because I've started to see these patterns of, let me tell you, the cheapest clients are definitely the ones that have the most edits, most frustration. Profit first is 100% right. And there's so many memes and jokes out there about the $500 client versus the $5,000 or even $50,000 client that's just like, yeah, I trust you. You're a professional. And I think that's a really important takeaway from this as well, is just knowing that there are bigger opportunities out there, and somehow they are way less stressful because people actually value what you're doing. So if you undercut yourself and if you price too low, you're putting yourself in that market, in that category of people that just want to nickel and dime you and like stress you out, and they feel like you owe them so much. But if you kind of break through that, if you can get into this abundance mindset and say, there's more out there for me, and I'm willing to connect with that and have that opportunity, you'll actually find that there's a lot better opportunities and they're a lot less stressful because they see the value of what you do. And first step is you seeing the value of what you do so you can actually go after those larger opportunities. So I really hope that you've been able to take from this some of these ideas of what do you need and what do you want, so you can figure out what you're able to do in terms of charging your worth. And I think a lot of that really starts and centers on like, what do you want personally? Because if you don't have this vision, this goal of what you want out of life, or what you want for the next couple years or couple weeks or couple months, it's going to be really hard to come up with pricing and charging and coming up with value-based, all of these different things. So I think it's really, really key to just listen to yourself or tune into what you're actually excited about, what you want out of life. And then you can kind of go back to that second step of figuring out, okay, how do I offer something of this value? Let's say I want to make $100,000. Okay, how do I break that down and actually accomplish that? And there's so many different ways you can break things down. There's so many different ideas you can have. Back to that initial point of, okay, do we want to sell more of something or do we want to raise the price on it? And sometimes it makes more sense to sell more of something, especially if it's something that can be easily replicated. So there's a lot of levers and different things we have to work with here in order to feel valued and to charge our worth and have this confidence. So there's no one size fits all solution, but it is getting in tune with yourself and figuring out, how can I feel really good about what I'm charging? Because ultimately, I think that that's what makes us feel good as people, is if we feel valued. To a certain degree, it doesn't really matter if you're making more money than the person next to you. How do you feel about it? Because your perception's so key with finances. If you feel happy and excited and good about what you're making, that's probably more valuable than if you're making double that, but you feel terrible and stressed out all the time. So I think so much of this work around pricing is all about mindset, all about building confidence, building intentionality, being okay with where you're at, but also being open to new opportunities and the abundance that's out there for you. So I'm not going to get into all of the different resources that I have because this is a free workshop for all of you, but I of course have additional resources if you're interested in connecting with me offline. I want to be a resource for you. I'm on Instagram, Lettering Works, also on LinkedIn. You can find me. My name's pretty easy to search because the different spelling of Chelsie. So it's just Chelsie, last name Tamms, Tamms. So I would encourage you to find me out on the internet. I would love to connect with you, love to help you, love to answer any questions if you think of questions after this presentation. But I'd also love to just open it up for questions here. What do you want to talk about in relation to all things pricing, all things mindset, all things money? And I just want to thank you all for being here, for your attention, and for really being open to this idea of, like, it's uncomfortable to talk about money a lot of times. So even showing up to something like this, I feel like is the first step in really feeling good about, I can go into my next meeting and charge double or charge what I need to charge. And I think that's hopefully the big takeaway for all of you is it's going to be different for everyone, but you want to feel good about it. So how do you build those tools, those resources, connect with people that make you feel inspired and motivated to charge what makes you feel good? So thank you again for having me, and I'd love to answer any questions you have.
We'll see if we have any questions come in. Either at this point, just unmute if you have any questions, or you could put something in the chat if there's someone else is coming here. If there's anything you want to ask. I have a little gnat coming around here. I really loved the abundance mindset. I loved that, like even that little phrase now, and that's just, I really like that a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like the abundance mindset is so key, and it really applies to everything in your life. It's not just pricing yourself or pricing your services, but the more you can shift into that, I think the more open you can be to all the opportunities out there. And the scarcity mindset is very much real. It really pulls us down in that negative direction. I think it makes it feel really heavy and stressful. So the more you can get into the abundance mindset instead of that scarcity mindset, the more you can just really flourish in your business and all that you're doing.
Yeah, I really like that. Any other questions or comments? I've got this little gnat around me. Any other questions or comments for Chelsie? If we end up, finish a few minutes early, that's fine, but I just want to make sure anybody has the chance, or anything we want to put out there.
Yeah, so one of the questions here is, any advice on finding a target market? Can you tell me, Maria, what you are offering? Tutoring. Perfect. So yeah, I think advice, so I'll talk specifically to tutoring and looking for a target market for that. So I think the biggest thing is you want to understand what value you're providing and who you might be able to provide, who needs that value, who could you provide that value to. So if you're really skilled at, say, a specific subject, then your target market might be people that are interested in learning more about that subject. Or this is something to think about too. And I think tutoring is a perfect example, because you have to think about like who the customer is and who the client is in terms of like who's actually paying you and who's the end user. So there's a difference there also. You may be tutoring a child, and a parent might actually be your customer or client because they're the one paying for the tutoring. So I think that's a really key distinction. And that's actually probably one of the best examples out there, in that your customer or the end user of your product might not always be this target market that you're going after. So you might be looking for a specific type of parent. Maybe you're looking for a single parent who doesn't have time right now to help their child with math. That could be a very specific target market, but the more specific you can get, the more you can speak to those exact struggles and pain points. So imagine yourself as a single mother, and then you could say to her, like, I understand how hard it is to juggle this job and picking your child up for school. And then by the time you get home, you've already made dinner. You just don't want to help them with the math homework because it's just been such a long day. You're doing it all. So if that is your messaging, that's going to resonate really, really well with, for example, the single mother. So that messaging that you have can be really tailored to a specific target market. Whereas maybe your target market is actually teachers who need to hire your tutoring services to prep for like some big test that they have or something to that effect, then that would be a totally different message that you're sending. And I think this goes to that key point of your target market can't be everyone. A lot of people starting out in business will say something along the lines of, this is for everyone who might be interested. That doesn't really resonate with people. So the reason you want to define this target market is so that you can speak more specifically to that type of person and you can understand their pain points, where they see value in this and everything that they really need in terms of what you have to offer. So I think hopefully that helps you in terms of building out your target market. An example of that, but really think through, like, if you had an ideal customer or persona, how much money do they make? Where do they hang out? Where do they live? How many kids do they have? What do they do for fun? Figure out all of these things about them, and then you'll be able to relate to them better and connect with them better through your messaging, which is ultimately going to help them understand how valuable you are and what you have to offer. Glad it was helpful. And then we just got a couple other comments in here. Being impressed with the information. Thank you so much. And being in an art-based field, so thinking about this abundance mindset and also considering all costs, emphasis on the all, definitely. It is so valuable to keep in mind, because especially as an artist and being in an art-based field, 100% there are things that we buy that we forget that we bought, and they're expensive. Art supplies, tools are expensive. So making sure that they're considered, because things do break. And when they break, we want to have plenty of money in our reserves to replenish them and replace them without this stress and fear. And this, going back to that scarcity mindset. Have you ever seen somebody post, hey, I'm selling some art because my car broke down and I need to fix my car? That is much more of a scarcity mindset versus somebody with an abundant mindset would probably approach that completely differently and not necessarily rely on that like victim mentality, or even this thing happened and now we're being reactive. Being abundant is being more proactive and getting really excited about, okay, I'm offering this incredible deal. You're going to be missing out if you don't take advantage of it. And also this incredible deal is going to afford me to fix my car if it breaks, or fix anything else if it breaks, which I think is a really, really great place to be in business, because if you're living paycheck to paycheck as an entrepreneur, you're setting yourself up for lots and lots of stress. So the more you can charge your worth, the more you can build up that reserve for yourself, and then have that flexibility to be even more and more abundant in your thinking and your approach to the projects that you take on. Any other questions?
Any other questions in the comments, or you could just unmute? We just got some really nice, we keep getting some nice comments there about the information. So clearly it was very helpful, Chelsea. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad.
And if there's anything else, go ahead and put it in there. But otherwise, I guess I'll just start wrapping up. Then we're about 5 minutes early, which is, you know, hey, not a bad thing. 5 extra minutes in the night. But I want to say thank you so much. A lot of good information there. And also we were able to record this. So if anybody needed to go back and watch some of it on demand, you can get that link from us and we'll have it. And if there's anything else, Chelsea, I guess we're going to just wrap it up here.
Yeah, I would just encourage you to connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn. If you want to email me, my email is just hello@letteringworks.com, which is shown on the screen. So if you have other questions, you can definitely connect with me. And we got one other question. The book that I recommended again is Profit First. I'll drop that in the chat too, so you have it.
Great.
But yeah, I appreciate everyone's time and look forward to connecting with you all offline as well.
Yes. Okay. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a wonderful evening. Okay. Take care.